Sir, I can't work tonight. It's Christmas Eve.
It's Christmas Eve for all of us.
The season of giving. So get off your sorry ass.
Town Hall's expecting a record number of Santas.
It's gonna be a real clusterfuck.
Holiday horror is a damn staple of the movie medium. You of course have things based on Valentine's Day like My Bloody Valentine and its remake, Halloween with, well, Halloween, and St. Patrick's Day with our favorite murderous leprechaun.
Ring around a rosy, a bucket full of posy.
You also have a couple of random ones on 4th of July with Uncle Sam, Thanksgiving has Blood Harvest, and New Year's has New Year's Evil. Christmas though? Christmas has a whole advent calendar full of options to choose from, both good and bad.
Santa?
Yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus.
It's arguably everyone's favorite but also most vulnerable time of the year, and there are multiple types of subgenres to choose from. The terror on screen is a jolly old time, but it can't be based on a real story, right? There's one loose remake of a movie that also qualifies for Black Sheep, and Best Horror Movie You Never Saw, that took shocking true events to craft its narrative. Check the chimney and leave out the cookies as we find out what the fuck really happened to Silent Night.
Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas!
As I said before, most of these holiday horrors are just original slasher screenplays in the wake of Halloween and Friday the 13th, but one of the original Christmas horrors, Black Christmas, was based on existing things. Black Christmas, which predates the slasher boom of the 80s and even Halloween by a few years, was based on the classic "the killer is in the house" trope, and that would be utilized most famously in the Carol Kane-led When a Stranger Calls. In addition to that, though, original screenplay author A. Roy Moore also based his script on serial killer Wayne Bowden, who killed 4 women over a 3-year span in Canada. Bowden was chillingly dubbed the vampire rapist as he would bite the breasts of his victims. Yikes. If you've seen Black Christmas, then obviously the urban legend had far more of an effect than the real-life monster, but sometimes horror fiction comes from the real-life headlines. Silent Night from 2012 is a very loose remake of 80s staple and somehow 5-movie series Silent Night, Deadly Night, which kicked off in 1984. Written by Jason Rothwell and directed by Stephen Miller, Silent Night also boasts a fun cast that includes Malcolm McDowell, Jamie King, Donald Logue, and Ellen Wong. It's gory, excessive, fast-paced romp that checks all the boxes that a holiday slasher needs, and is far more entertaining and intense than it has any right to be. It had an incredibly limited theatrical release, but enjoyed huge success on the home video market and surprisingly positive critical response. The writer would go on to write the Mad Mikkelsen-led John Wick ripoff Polar, while director Miller would work in the home release realm with actors like Bruce Willis, John Cusack, Nicolas Cage, and did the Stallone-led Escape Plan sequel that also featured Dave Bautista. A film he was attached to that never saw the light of day was the remake of Motel Hell, which would have been a blast based on this movie. While Silent Night is technically a loose remake of Silent Night, Deadly Night, on the outside it appears to only take the bare minimum of that story.
Punish!
With a seemingly catatonic relative having a jump scare warning about Christmas Eve,
You see Santa Claus tonight? You better run, boy!
And a kid seeing his mom slaughtered by a man in a Santa suit to grow up and go on a killing spree of his own. A deeper look, however, has a few scenes taken directly from the original movie, updated nearly 30 years later. The flashback scene in the movie, though, is also tied to a very real Christmas Eve massacre perpetrated by Bruce Jeffrey Pardo in Covina, California on Christmas Eve of 2008. It was a horrifying crime that left 8 dead with very little answers or resolutions. The movie was based more on this event than the movie it was a remake of, but how close did it follow real life? The movie opens with a man listening to holiday music as he cleans himself up and gets ready to tackle the holiday, all while a woman is tied up screaming, while a man is strapped to a chair with Christmas lights all around him. The nameless man is putting on a Santa suit and mask and has a whole case full of weapons to choose from. He kills the man in the chair, later known as Deputy Jordan, by electrocution before moving on to his next victims, including a very bratty girl.
I didn't ask for that.
We get some story and exposition with Deputy Brattamore, played by Jamie King, being called into work on Christmas Eve by the Chief, played by Malcolm McDowell. Brattamore is going through her first Christmas after losing her husband and is struggling. She speaks with the mayor, her parents, and the creepy town pastor and heads to the station to start her shift. Well, there's certainly a lot of story building and exposition here to set up the film, but none of this is related to the true crime. The movie takes place in a small mountain town over the course of a couple of days, and the killer doesn't seem to have any rhyme or reason to his execution. Covina, on the other hand, is a suburb of LA, and the horrific crime was targeted specifically by Pardo, all in one location and going after specific people. The Santa suit he used was obviously followed by the film, as well as the suitcase of weapons alluding to the multiple weapons police found in Pardo's house and car. Brattamore investigates complaints from an abandoned house, the one we saw our first victims in earlier, and finds their remains. The chief shows up and they debate whether it's the husband or a stranger that committed the crimes. Chief McDowell doesn't want it reported wide so they can handle it themselves.
This sick fuck is gonna wish he never set foot in my town.
Our Santa Slayer interrupts a tasteful softcore shoot and gruesomely dispatches all involved. The police hear about some blood at the hotel and about the little girl from earlier, but are unfortunately a few steps behind the killer. They do, however, find a video camera used, and it's a guy wearing a Santa suit, and he's huge. Unfortunately, nearly the entire town is dressed up as Santa. Again, apart from the killer wearing a Santa suit, there isn't much here that follows real life. The movie killer uses a multitude of weapons and seemingly dispatches his victim at random, whereas Pardo only used a makeshift flamethrower and a few handguns to kill his victims. Instead of multiple places, it was the Christmas party of his ex-wife who he officially divorced only 10 days prior. In a sad similarity to the film, there were unfortunately child victims of this spree killer as he opened fire immediately upon entering the residence. Our trigger-happy Saint Nick then goes to church to take in the sermon before gutting the preacher and giving one of the parishioners the money in another nod to Silent Night, Deadly Night, where only the bad are punished by our killer.
Punish!
The police station is full of Santas, but Brattamore has a suspect named Stein Carson at the bar. He tells a story of a guy that snapped and killed his ex-wife at a Christmas party with a flamethrower before she figures out that he was the drug dealer they thought may have killed the group at the porn shoot. She calls her father after he escapes, who was the one to take down the crazy Santa in the man's story. Brattamore and the captain realize that it's not Carson, or at least Brattamore does, and before the captain can warn the mayor, he, his daughter, and her boyfriend are all murdered. This section of the movie pulls double duty. There are full scenes that play heavily into the remake angle, with the mayor's older daughter's death on antlers, and the subsequent gifting of the younger daughter a present from the Santa killer. But the story told by Carson is the movie explaining its inspiration, while trying to tie it to the original film. It is true that something snapped inside of Pardo, and he decided to end the life of his ex-wife and anyone there, but he didn't bring a flamethrower. He brought a rolling air compressor that was converted into a gas pump and no less than 4 9mm pistols to do the deed. Brattamore goes to Carson's hotel and ends up killing him before realizing that he wasn't the killer and that her father is in danger. She arrives at the home to find her father dead while the killer is taking out the entire police station Terminator style. Brattamore makes it back to the station, but everyone but Brenda, including another Santa prisoner, is dead. The green and red emergency lights, very on the nose, allow the Santa to creep in and out of the shadows, but Brattamore is able to turn the flamethrower to him and escape. She wasn't able to kill him, however, and the severely burned Ronald Jones moves on to the next town. As you can see, most of this movie falls under the Silent Night, Deadly Night remake banner, with only a few threads connecting it to the Covina massacre. In total, 9 people died to gunshot wounds or from the fire that quickly got out of control and reached 40 to 50 feet in the air. Pardo fled the scene after the fire and changed out of the Santa gear before heading to his brother's house. He was found dead in his brother's home after turning one of the guns on himself. Much like the movie antagonist, it seemed that Pardo's plan was to escape to Canada when authorities found air travel tickets and a wad of money. This was later disproved as only the airline was Canadian and the destination was actually to Illinois. The heat from the fire was so intense that in a gross and shocking turn of events, parts of the Santa suit were permanently melted to his body. With weapons, ammo, and the remains of the Santa suit still in the car deemed a threat, the bomb squad accidentally started another fire that destroyed the car and any potential evidence or further explanation forever. At Pardo's house, the police found some bombs, tools for more flamethrowers, a tactical shotgun, and additional pistols. It would seem that he had multiple ways to carry out his ghastly plan. Silent Night is a hidden gem of a mid-2000s horror film that hits all the right spots in what it attempts to deliver. While the writer may have been inspired by current events when he wrote the screenplay, very little of that comes out in the final product, probably making this the least factual comparison to date. That's perfectly fine though, as the horrific events of that Christmas Eve night in Covina are probably better left unexplored, and the movie is best enjoyed for the hidden gem, over-the-top holiday horror movie it was designed to be.
You better watch out, boy.